everyone. This is Vickie from the Boxer Within podcast, and today's guest is Darlene, and she is involved in martial arts and working with kids. So we'll start cracking these questions. So let's start with kids today move less than any generation in history, and you're saying it's affecting how they learn. What are we actually seeing happen?
Wow, that's a big question. But
got to hook the audience, right? We've got to hook the audience.
Yeah. But thank you, Vickie, for inviting me to be on your podcast. It's an honor to do so.
Thank you.
Yes, I have been witnessing a great deal of changes in young children. I'm mostly working with sort of 6 to 12-year-olds in karate, and especially with the younger children coming up, I'm finding that especially their focus and concentration has declined. So, if a child's focus and concentration has declined, that means it affects every area of their development. So whether they're trying to learn a new hobby or some complex sport or in the classroom, I think it's going to affect their development. And, with technology rapidly advancing, as we all love our screens, and sadly, due to just sort of ignorance, parents and even teachers just not fully aware of the detrimental side effects of too much sedentary positioning, I think they just are not limiting the control of screen use, and that is having real dire consequences on all other developmental areas.
Well, thank you for that. You've actually answered probably 2-3 other questions that I had for you with regard to that, but that's okay. But yeah, I agree with you. Obviously things are changing, and things have changed over, so many years with screens and distractions like that, what you just mentioned. Mm-hmm. So with your 40 years experience in education, and of course you're a 4th degree black belt, how did those two worlds collide and create what you do now?
Whoa, long story, but yeah, I mean, I was always pretty sporty as a teenager, and I actually only started martial arts when I was 30. So as a result of taking my 2 children to a karate class, my eyes were glittering watching, and being I had been a gymnast, and I just knew that I could pick it up, and I just wanted to run with it. I just loved what karate looked like and what it stood for. So I got involved. I started karate, and I got my black belt within 6 years. I was determined, and I started teaching pretty quickly. So I got involved with the teaching side with children and started to really witness the benefits. And even more so, I would say, in the last sort of 6 to 7 years, I've really been witnessing how children with learning difficulties can greatly develop self-confidence and competence, maybe not as quick as other children, but they certainly do develop at their own pace if they've got somebody who's patient and guiding them, supporting them, praising them, and just giving them the time to learn, and also exploring many ways of trying to find ways for children to learn. That's needing to happen more and more these days. But yeah, I mean, between gymnastics and teaching karate, I work with children daily, a couple of hours a day, mostly karate. And I have found that my gymnastic background has really enhanced my karate teaching with young children. Because I use a lot of equipment to engage them. So balls, bean bags, hoops, ropes. I use this type of equipment to engage their senses. So tactile, visual. If they've got something to punch, they're more, if they're holding a ball in their hand and then they're punching the ball, anything that can enhance their learning, I do it, because engaging children, keeping them engaged, inspiring them to move is just becoming more and more challenging. So my mix of gymnastics and karate, it's kind of enhanced everything I teach in karate. And I've had really great results, and I really love what I do.
Well, speaking of results, can you tell me about a young person's transformation?
Sure. Yeah, I had a little boy who I was sort of teaching in kindergartens some time back, and I have a little 4-year-old who came to my sort of fun karate classes, and extremely uncoordinated, very shy, very low self-confidence. And I just thought, oh gosh, I mean, I find children like that a challenge. I want to help them. I want to really teach them and give them the time and that they deserve. And I was like, wow, how am I going to crack this one, you know? Anyway, he came to karate every week. His parents knew that he had difficulties. They were very grateful for all the time I gave him. He was very cooperative, did his best. And when he finished kindergarten, he started to come to my karate club. And today he's in the Finnish team, representing Finland in international championships. So, you know, it hasn't come easy. It's been extremely hard work for him. He trains so much harder than any other student, never misses a class, but just believes in himself. And because we believe in him, he believes in himself. And just through perseverance and extreme hard work, he made it. So, you know, I think he's not winning medals, but the fact that he was acknowledged and selected, wow, what a proud moment that was. So
absolutely, a very proud moment. And it's really good you made emphasis on, you know, the belief in himself, and you guys, you know, and your club believed in him as well. And I think that's one of the biggest things, especially with those kids who have got learning difficulties or challenges. I think that's a pretty important thing to have. Doesn't matter if you don't win medals or anything like that. So it's I think it's a really good thing. And in terms of that, you know, with the learning difficulties, you've obviously, you know, different kids come to you for different things. You know, so let's talk neurodivergent, for example. Are there different movement approaches that you use? I mean, every child is different, obviously, but are there sort of, you know, specific moves that you would use for one child versus another child?
I would like to. You know, there's sometimes children who really do need more attention than others. But, you know, integrating such children, although it's what everyone says should be done, I do believe it has its challenges. You know, to actually signal out such children is not looked upon in a positive way. But at the same time, I do believe if I could rather take 3 or 4 children who have struggles in various ways and teach them alone, and then give the other children who are able to forge ahead the attention they need, the right kind of challenges. I would prefer that, but that's not possible very often here. So I keep my classes small, 10 to 12 students at a time. And I run my classes fairly strictly, but in a fun way. So I've kind of found that very fine line between discipline and fun, and doesn't always work, but most of the time, the children, they conform to the structure of the class and the sort of, the Buddha discipline of karate. You know, the bowing at the door and the kneeling and how to sit when you're watching a demonstration and so on. So the children, when they see the others doing it, they do follow. They might sort of, you know, be a bit restless and start pulling my tatami apart, things like that. But, you know, I just think with gradual guidance and speaking in the right way to such children without bringing too much attention to them all the time, that they perhaps are not doing things they shouldn't. I've just kind of learned how to work with children within a class like that. And eventually they really do conform to the structure of the class, and they come to really love it, and they settle. And, you know, many children, they don't want me to touch them. And I find that quite challenging because I like to give each child a little hug. And, you know, sometimes you have to fix them and so on, but it comes with time, and they just need more patience, more love, lots of praise, and just connection. I think that is the biggest word, is connection, because without that connection with a neurodivergent child, it's very difficult to make progress. So if they feel safe and loved and they're like they belong there, doesn't matter if they're good or bad, they're there, and they then just thrive and progress. it's just, it's harder work for the instructor, I think. And it takes years of experience to integrate such children and to be able to teach in a way that every single child is achieving and progressing.
Yes, I agree with you because, I obviously work with neurodivergent as well, and all kids and some adults. And it's been that sort of, parents will come to me and say, I've tried to take them to a club, but it's too hard for the instructor. And, especially with that communication, because say you've got like 20 kids in a class and there might be a couple that are struggling, it's really hard to put your focus on 2 kids versus, 10 kids. But obviously, with experience, as you've just demonstrated, you can achieve that. So, it just takes time, as you said, but you're right about the communication. And I found that and connection rather, I found that with working with the kids that I work with, although it's one-on-one, as soon as you build that rapport and that connection, you see, their belief in themselves because you believe in them, and you can see them just improve so much, and that confidence just grows.
Yeah. I think it's just giving them the time and space.
Yeah.
Just understanding what they need when it becomes too much, or you're like expecting too much of them, and perhaps you're telling them to do too many things to think about at one time. It's not easy for them. Instead of really going step by step and breaking things down into achievable little bits of movement, instead of saying do the block, it's rather start here, go down, great, let's do it again, just breaking it up in a manageable way. And I mean, I teach that like that in general anyway. It doesn't matter what ability the child has, building that strong foundation is paramount. So if every child or every student, doesn't matter how old they are, without a strong foundation, it's very difficult for them to then move forward and progress. So
that's true. And I think it's good for us too as instructors, where it teaches us a lot about patience and teaching in different ways, because we all learn differently in different ways.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Yep. Just to go back with, you're talking about the ages that you work with. And you mentioned something about, or maybe in the notes that you provided, why is the 3 to 7 window so critical? What happens to kids who miss it?
Yeah, I mean, in that sort of age group, that is when the brain is optimized for learning. So every movement experience, well, it doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be movement. Any experience creates neural pathways in the brain. So they just being created, just millions of them all the time when the child is in this age window. And it is these early experiences that really define the outcome of the child. And if they are not given the opportunity to have different experiences, like, for example, if we just talk about movement, because obviously that's my passion, if children are not given the opportunity to move in a variety of ways to develop a strong movement foundation, then they will be lacking in physical skills. And research is now proving that the connection between the body and the brain, so, crossing the midline activities, for which karate is extremely good for, that supports literacy skills. And if they cannot cross the midline, then I'm not saying they do have problems, but it is possible that they could struggle with reading and writing as well. So, and, unable to cross the midline, it affects behavior as well. And as well as developing dominance, having one side of the brain leading, all of these things affect cognitive learning later on. And, after the age of 7, if they have not learned a wide variety of skills, it is then harder to do so when they're older. It's like language. Children can learn language like that when they're very young, but if they don't, persist and consistently practice that language, then they lose it quite easily. So the quality of anything they do in the early years is very important, and repetition of those experiences. So the more they practice doing a karate kick, for example, the better they get. They start to hone it. They start to get the technique right. They start to add in the power. If they're never exposed to a karate kick, they don't develop it. It's like young tennis players or golfers. The more they practice, the better they get, and the body remembers how to do everything. So I think just the connection to cognitive learning alone is really, really important now for young children. And I'm finding that a lot of kids who come to me at age 6 or 7, their basic physical foundation is quite poor.
Mm.
So that delays even karate development, because instead of already starting to teach them the basic stances, punches, kicks, and so on, I have to teach them how to balance. I have to teach them how to follow instructions. I have to teach them how to copy me. They have to remember 3 instructions that they have to do and follow through. So it affects everything if they have a poor physical foundation. So it affects their physical competence and confidence, and then going into classroom, it then affects their ability to learn as well. So, physical development in the early years is really, really crucial. And I think many people are still unaware of that.
I think that's very true, because I remember when I started when I was 15. I first started Taekwondo, and it took me a very long time to get the moves and that cognitive understanding of using right brain and left brain. And you're right, I've actually worked with some younger ones as well, and I've trained when I was training myself, some younger ones. And you're right, they pick up those moves quite quickly, which is why I believe some of the parents, and they would say that to me, I come as well, but I get my kids to actually do the workout and we train together, because they're able to retain the moves, especially when you're doing like katas and stuff. So that when they go home, they can practice with their child, because the child's likely to remember it more so than the adult.
Exactly. Yeah, that is so true. That is so true. And,
I saw that many years of training, and I'm like, this is really good that you guys are doing it together. Oh, yeah, as much as I enjoy it, obviously it's a bonding moment. They're able to absorb the information quicker than the adult.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. They just still have that flexibility in the brain to learn. Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, having taught both gymnastics and karate, I think they're just both amazing sports for kids. And, the more I teach karate to children with difficulties, the more I realize what a brilliant hobby it is for kids and for anybody listening out there. I mean, because of bilateral coordination, crossing the midline, directional movement. I mean, when a child has to learn their first kata, it's very hard. Make no mistake.
And for adults too.
It's just as hard for the instructor to teach it, because you have to be a very good teacher to teach kata, that, to break it up into those little pieces in a way that they can achieve it. But at the same time, they're learning weight transition. And, weight transition, being able to put the weight on the front leg or the back leg to do a rotation in kata, I mean, that doesn't come easy to children today. Whereas I would say 7, 8 years ago, if a child had to turn, they knew it automatically happened, that they know they lift up the heel and then they can rotate on the ball of the foot. Whereas I find today that is a learned skill. I have to teach children how to do that. And that is because children are not doing locomotive movement. So, the kindergartens are super busy, teachers are under pressure, they're not doing so much movement, the kids are not doing so much movement outdoors. Maybe some parents can't afford to send their children to hobbies. They're not being exposed to different forms of movement, where galloping, skipping, sidestepping, walking on the tiptoes, any kind of locomotive movement where they have to transfer weight from one foot to the other, then the body becomes very familiar with it and they know how to naturally transfer their weight. But because they're not moving so much, when they come to me and I have to teach kata, I have to teach them. You lift your heel and then you rotate on the ball of your foot. So, weight transfers, directional awareness. I mean, wow, I think, karate is absolutely amazing in these sort of perceptual areas like directional awareness, body awareness, spatial awareness, temporal awareness. So, all of these things. So if we start with directional awareness, I mean, the children have to learn which way they are turning. They have to be able to react one side or the other. They need to have that left or right brain as well. But they really learn to use their bodies and know what direction they have to take. And then spatial awareness, they have to understand that distance between themselves and an opponent if they are training. How long is my arm? Is it going to reach my opponent? How close do I have to move in to attack? How far do I have to get back so they don't hit me? So a very important skill for daily tasks, moving around the classroom, in a shop, they need an understanding of spatial awareness. And this is learned through karate. And then body awareness, same thing, where is the shoulder, down to the wrist, turn your fist at the end, how to use your hands for different movements, they develop body awareness. And then temporal awareness is the speed, the velocity, how quickly do they have to punch before that opportunity to attack is gone, so just learning how much power is in their body and how to use it effectively. So all of these perceptual areas are done in just learning basic skills in karate. So sorry, I go off track, Vickie.
No, it's fantastic. It gives me the opportunity to listen instead of asking 20 questions. But on that, like with everything that you've just described, and I'm very biased because I obviously I'm a martial artist as well, but these skills can actually be transferred to life.
Absolutely, yeah. Definitely.
Which is something these kids need because, I imagine the way you teach now versus from 40 years ago is very different. And the kids that you see now are very different to the kids that you would have seen, 40 years ago as well and trained and worked with.
Yeah, I think, one of the challenges I'm finding lately is that, karate is something where, or any Buddha sport, I don't want to keep meaning just karate, but, the children want to progress, but these days they want to work as little as possible to progress. And, I find that children, they don't have the same agility or enthusiasm to work hard and to physically sweat. They tire easily, and their muscle tone is usually quite poor. And that's
why do you think that is? Why do you think that change has sort of come to light?
Yeah. I mean, the muscle tone, it happens through exercise.
Or more lack of effort, I guess. I know when I was training, and I'm sure we trained hard. It's a bit different.
I think it comes so much from the home too, just children understanding values, that nothing comes free. You have to work for it. I mean, for children to grade, they have to train a certain amount of hours. They have to show good attitude and spirit, teamwork in the dojo and out the dojo. They have to show that they want to learn. They have to learn the techniques for that belt. And without all of that, they don't grade. And, very often I'm finding that lately I've had children leave because they're not grading to the next belt quick enough.
And for a lot of parents, and I'm not saying all parents, but and even when I was training, I'm talking 20 years ago, a lot of it was, I just want my child to get their black belt and that's it. Yeah. But it literally starts, your black belt is really your white belt.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's where the hard work begins.
Yeah. So, I mean, just inspiring them to work hard for themselves.
Absolutely, yes.
And, karate is very much an individual sport. It's not like getting on a football field and there's a whole bunch of kids just chasing after a ball. It's, karate is very much about your own effort. What you put in, you get out. And if they don't work hard and focus and concentrate and understand they have to learn techniques well or katas well, then they don't move forward. So, I think that self-discipline and that focus and that determination, the perseverance, the patience that comes with learning karate, that's life skills.
Absolutely, because especially that, right, if you want to proceed to the next belt, the effort that it takes, it's not just practicing in the dojo, it's practicing at home. And I remember doing hours and hours, and probably like yourself, and, these young people that have gone to become champions and compete and whatnot, it's the exact same thing. It's not just 2-3 hours in the gym, 2 nights a week. It's an everyday for multiple hours.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, sorry, go on.
No, go for it.
I was going to say, in terms of, we talk about parents and, as you mentioned, it probably comes from home. What are some common mistakes that parents are making, but with good intentions, thinking they're helping, but they're actually missing the mark?
Yeah, I mean, there's always many different kinds of parents out there. I do love the parents who bring their kids to us and just totally trust us. And, whatever we think is their level and we award that belt, happy days, they support it, they praise their child, they're grateful for everything. But then you get those parents who, well, why is my child this level? And that child over there is the same age, but yet he's a purple belt and my child's only an orange,
Yep.
or questioning the grade we've awarded their child. But I watched my child and he's really good. Yeah, but he hasn't put in the hours. He is good, but part of the requirements is the hours they attend. It's part of the discipline. You have to put in, everyone has to do the same, has the same regulations, So, I mean, it is quite difficult. Fortunately, I haven't had too many parents who are like, like, how do I deal with this one? But, mostly I've had supportive parents, but of course they're out there. And I think for parents to really just trust children and just let them go through the whole process, let them train at a pace they can manage. It doesn't matter if they're not achieving as much as their friend is achieving, but believing in that child for who they are, where they are at that time, and making that child feel like that's okay. You don't have to be going as fast as the child next to you.
That's exactly right, because children won't look at it as a competition. It's really like the parent who's thinking about it. And as you just mentioned, why is my child not progressing versus the other child? So you kind of just let them fun, and I believe they find their own way, especially if you believe in them and they believe in themselves as well.
Yeah, exactly.
But on that note, like, what are two or three simple movement activities a parent could do with their child today? No equipment, no expertise needed. Just, what activities could they do?
Big question.
I've stumped you.
I mean, I think a very simple thing, with young children is taking them to a great playground. In Australia, they have amazing playgrounds.
They do. They've actually got now playgrounds where they've actually got like body weight equipment, which I hadn't seen. They've been around probably maybe a decade now, but I'd never seen that growing up. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think, just playing on the monkey bars where they're going from one to
I was just going to say that, yeah.
Yeah, because hand strength is so important. So, we were talking about muscle tone, and even if they can't hold the fist all the time, the hands have to work. And I mean, like these monkey bars, it's developing hand strength, it's developing upper body strength, so getting the children, challenging their children to do fun things in the, on a climbing frame, in like creating autonomy, like saying, oh my goodness, do you think you could move on those bars from here to there? Come on, let's give it a try, and give them a bit of support and, maybe boost lift them a little bit so that it's not so difficult to achieve. But just to support them in doing a wide variety of movement. Like if there's a low wall, oh, do you think you can walk on that wall? Oh, really great.
Balance.
Look at you, stand up straight. Then you're developing balance. And of course, for karate, balance is very, very important when you're on one leg and your leg is up there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think core strength is something that is really lacking in children today. And without core strength, children, obviously you need to be able to take a punch, learn you've got to have good core strength as a karate student because of the posture you require in the sport. You need to be held upright all the time and be able to move your body as a unit. And if you don't have core strength, that's difficult to achieve. And of course, without core strength, children sitting in a chair in a classroom, they start to tire easily, and then they start to fidget. And it's not because they don't want to learn, but it's because their body is getting tired. then they start to slouch and they're wrapping their legs around the chair. And so developing core strength at home, like, for example, wheelbarrow, the wheelbarrow walk, you know what I mean? The
Yes.
hands up, the parents lift up the legs. Every night when you go to clean your teeth, the children get a wheelbarrow walk today. Or how long can they stand on tiptoes? Just little challenges when there's time to kill. Crab walk. I do a lot of, when I teach karate with the young kids, I incorporate a lot of fun coordination, body strengthening activities. Superman, for example. Who can hold Superman for the longest? And if the parents really want to support their children's physical development, they have to move with them. And if parents do also get on the floor and do Superman or try and swing on the monkey bars, or, you're not only doing yourself justice, because all of us need to try and keep fit and strong.
True.
But if children see parents doing it, then they very much will do it. 100% more will do it than just being told to do it.
Well, exactly right. But then you get a lot of kids going, come on, because I've had it, I'm sure you've had, come on, you can do it. It's easy. And it's like, well, go on then. Why don't you show them how it's done?
Yeah.
And then you see the look on their face like, well, if you're going to, force your child, get down there and show them how it's done as well.
Yeah, it's a way with words. I think you have to sort of inspire your children and make it fun, I mean, okay, like if you're going to go from one, or let's say climb around the whole climbing frame. Hey, let's see how quickly you can do it. Let's time you. Kids love a little challenge. So so you just get that timer out and you just ready, go. And they have to move as quickly as they can around that climbing frame. But what are they doing? They're having to be very careful, body awareness, spatial awareness, hand-eye coordination, foot-eye coordination, agility, flexibility. It all comes into play while they are moving around. So they are benefiting.
And it's unreal how people don't understand how many elements come together to make that happen. It's just karate, or it's, but there are so many things that have to come together to get the balance, to get that core strength, to get that agility and all those elements that you've just mentioned.
Yeah, exactly.
So go on. Sorry.
No, I was just saying, it's just for adults to be creative too, and instead of picking up the cell phone, rather try and get creative with the child and, oh, come on, I wonder if you can climb that high. Why don't you give it a try? It just has so much to do with the support we give our children.
Absolutely. And even as an instructor, because with my kids, I get them to do a combo, and I've done it. I've done it most recently with my own instructor through boxing, and I'll get them to do it. And their competition is, against me. How long did it take you to do? I'm going to do it faster. And I want that for them. Obviously, technique is, of course, important, but I love how they get motivated by the fact that, okay, it's timed. You did it in this amount of seconds. Well, I'm going to try and do it. And they would work the whole session just working that combination.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we spoke about parents, but what happens in school? Obviously with teachers, they've got the curriculum they've got to focus on. But what's something that teachers can do, in terms of sitting in a classroom? We have recess, we have lunch, and they're running around, but talking about intentional exercises perhaps in a classroom.
Well, I mean, it obviously depends on the space that they have. But, I have my program, Moovkids, that I have created for kindergartens that provides lots of fun activities. But, transitions, I think, teachers are so busy that it doesn't even cross their mind that instead of having them walk from here to the corridor to get ready to go out, have them move in a different way. Once a day, just once a day, have them walk on tiptoe or walk on their heels or walk on the sides of their feet or do little tiny hops or kangaroo jumps or, obviously you've got to always assess the safety aspect.
Of course.
But, there are different ways the children can develop their feet by just moving from one place to another. They could be moving sideways, or one hand is on their head, their thumb is on their belly button, and they walk on their tiptoes. I mean, it sounds crazy, but the kids love it. So just using opportunities during the day for movement, like transitions. And for example, when the register is taken each morning, when they say a child's name, maybe they have to run around the classroom twice. Or if you've got a hopscotch layout, they have to do hopscotch, or they have to hop to the door and back, every child that she calls or he calls. So, just looking for different ways to incorporate a little bit of movement during the day. When they're getting restless, okay, stand up, stand behind your chair, put your hands on the back of the chair, put your legs wide, and then maybe you're lunging side to side, or you're doing squats, or maybe you're bending over to touch your toes. Something I like to do in my classes, I get quite a lot of international children because I speak both English and Finnish in my karate classes. I tend to get many different nationalities coming. And when I'm doing stretching, for example, which kids hate to stretch because it hurts them. And why
and
do
some adults.
Yeah, all adults, and then they're like, oh, but this hurts. Why do we have this hurts? Helping them understand why you need to be flexible. And what I like to do is we hold the stretch, and then I have the children, if I've got different nationalities, so maybe that child's counting to 10 in Finnish, and that child's counting in Swedish, and that child's counting in Russian,
wow,
and that child's counting in Spanish. So I end up doing like 10 flexibility exercises, and they're all intrigued listening to the different languages. And of course, that child it's good for them to be the center of attention and to be vocal in front of the whole class and to be showing, their culture. So I quite often do that for not just flexibility, but also like, jumping jacks, running on the spot, or, that kind of thing. But the child counts in their language, so it's just a simple way to add in movement in an engaging way. And I also often use a dice. I very often use a dice, throw the dice and it's number 6. Okay, everyone hop on one leg 6 times. Or do 6 jump turns or 6 burpees. Obviously, depends on the age of your children and what they're capable of. But I think just finding opportunities for movement in the playground as well. I mean, when I do my workshops for kindergarten teachers, I always try and encourage one teacher has just one day a week. They do an activity where the children can join in if they wish to, even if it's long rope skipping or dodgeball or a relay race or, just some kind of activity where children can optionally join in, but you're giving them the opportunity to move.
Yeah, because it's intentional movement, even though they don't realize it is. Dodgeball, you're going side to side to get away from the ball. It requires good core strength because you've got to move. Good leg ability, all those sorts of things that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah. Directional movement and timing and
Timing is everything, especially in dodgeball.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So do you think that discipline through your body is what's missing today for a lot of these young kids? I know you mentioned screens earlier. They should be getting out rather than doing some intentional movements.
I think is unique in the way that it is very much a personal sport, kind of like gymnastics. I think that having a combination of a team sport and a personal sport is very important. I think it's very good for their development. And obviously, if they're going to excel in one or the other, it might be they need to choose at a later time.
Yeah.
I mean, I strongly believe that children under the age of 10 should experience as many hobbies as they can, if it's affordable, if it's manageable, because children need to develop in all areas and decide what they like. And, here in Finland, basketball, football, those 2 hobbies, unfortunately, they make the children attend 3 to 4 times at a young age.
Oh, wow.
And that does not allow them time to do other hobbies. And there should be a law against it, in my opinion, because children should be experiencing other hobbies, not just doing one. And under the age of 10, I don't think doing the same hobby 4 to 5 times a week is healthy,
And they'll
so
get bored and then they get tired. And then I feel like that takes away that interest in doing another sport or finding another sport because they're so exhausted.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
um I coach goalkeeping, like I'm a goalkeeper coach, football. Well, football for your area, your neck of the woods, but soccer here. But
yeah,
a lot of the kids that I work with, you're talking about that individual sport because that position, I guess, is similar. When I say similar, you're looking at karate as an individual and you're looking at goalkeeping as an individual, but then you're also part of a team. And that gives them those two areas where you're doing something for yourself, but you're also doing something, for someone else, like a whole team. And it's funny when I've spoken to a few of them, I've been doing it for the last probably year, but over the last few months, a lot of them are like, oh, I used to do boxing, or I used to do karate. So it's funny how this attraction between this individual versus a team sport has come together.
yeah. Well, karate takes a lot of self-discipline.
It certainly does,
Really
even for an
does.
adult.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Yes.
To continue attending and persevering even when it gets hard. I think, in that way, once again, it's life skills.
It's that
You know?
resilience that you really need, I think,
Yeah.
for anything. I mean, everything that you've mentioned, but especially that resilience. And as I say to my kids, and I'm sure you do, it's that getting knocked down and getting back up again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, very, very important for them. Yeah.
So with all the kids that you've worked with and seen over this time, what's the inner fight that you've seen in the kids you've taught? Like the boxer within them, so to speak.
I think there's different perspectives to that. I mean, I think sadly a lot of karate kids are leaving and or struggling with attending regularly at a high when they're sort of a higher belt because of the pressure education puts on them. And then they are torn between focusing on karate, which they love so much, but also the demands of school and the parents expecting so much of them in both places. I think this often puts a lot of pressure on the children. And sadly, we do lose students, especially when they sort of get to the higher level of schooling, when they have to have very high scores to get into the higher school that they want to go to the next level. So I think this is sadly affecting children's commitment to a hobby, and that means that they move less. Whereas in fact, even if they're still training once a week, just hanging in there and keeping in and still training once a week, it's so good for them for their stress, to get a break from learning to focus on karate and forget about all of those extra stresses that they have as young people. Too many, really. So I really try and encourage students to at least still train once a week, but very often they don't feel like it's enough. They can see that their technique starts to decline, the others are forging ahead of them, and often we end up losing them. So I think that's one big struggle. And I think physical fitness, stamina. Children are not as fit as they used to be because they're not running around in the playgrounds, in the parks, playing football. They're not having to find something to do because the screens provide so much entertainment. So, is sitting still, looking at a screen, that's so easy and it's fun. And they just get that, what they're calling these days, the still face syndrome, where they just have this, they just can sit there for 2 hours without changing or going to eat or going to the toilet, or they're just so engrossed or they don't hear anything around them, so they get so addicted to that as against the option of going out and meeting the friends in the park.
Because one's easier and one's harder. So you're obviously going to choose the
it's
easier
physical
solution.
effort.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I
But
mean,
that's,
even here, sorry, Vickie,
no, go
even
on.
here in Finland, the young people going into the army, their stamina and physical fitness is the lowest it's ever been. So that means that as youngsters, they are not developing that physical fitness, and kids are not being sent out to play. They're not bored. They're not going to look for something to do to
And
climb
see,
a
that's the
tree.
thing, right? When we were growing
Yeah.
up, we were bored. Well, I don't know about you, but I was bored and you had to create ways to make, the hours pass. Whereas here
Yeah.
and now, they're not bored. And yet you hear some of them go, I hear parents telling me, so-and-so was bored. But how can you be bored? You got everything literally at your disposal.
Yeah, I mean, they're not given the opportunity to be creative and
Yeah,
to
that's exactly right.
yeah, just to go out and play. And I mean, I live right by a forest here. It's beautiful. There's like at the moment, I mean, for some stupid reason, I was in the forest and this huge tree had fallen over like a ditch. And it was like, what an amazing bridge for kids to play on.
I was
To
just thinking the
walk
same
along that
thing.
log to the other side, I mean, I took a photo of it and I thought, now, why did I do that? I just thought, what a perfect, fun place for kids to just, explore moving. How many ways can they move across that log and can they throw a rock over the log or, whatever.
Mm-mm.
But I very seldom kids just playing in the forest, building a fort in the forest, climbing the rocks or
Which
whatever.
is a real shame the way it's sort
Yeah,
of changed these days.
yeah.
But on that note, what's one thing that you would change about how we raise and educate children right now?
I have to say that screens are a huge problem, and it means that parents are not communicating with their kids much. They don't
Mm.
speak to their kids, and if they're not moving with the kids, they're not having that very crucial quality time where they develop a very close relationship with their children. They hear about their problems, what their friends are up to, what they're struggling with, what they're scared of. If there's no opportunity to communicate with your children and listen and just have heart-to-heart talks, I think that's causing such a rift in families between teenagers and adults, especially. And I do think it's because the children and the parents have their noses in a phone, or whether it's work or pleasure, um, or just because they feel secure if people are reading their posts or liking their images or whatever.
Yeah,
You know, Sadly, it has such huge
it
detrimental
does. It has
effects.
such huge influence
Yeah.
and impact.
Yeah. So, just to put down those screens and just be with your kids more, even if it's not moving. But of course, taking a walk in the forest or taking a hike or going to visit some monument or a car, whatever, wherever you live, whatever you
Mm-mm.
do, there's places to be and go. And, I think they're finding it harder and harder to do that, to really go out on an excursion and speak and be with their children without any other distractions. And it's the responsibility of the adult to inspire children to move. And if the
Absolutely. And
adults,
if
if the
if
adults are
you're an
not doing
active
it,
parent, then your child will actually see because it's through the actions, a lot
yeah,
of the time. Because you can have, I've known parents that go, oh, yeah, they need to be going there and doing that, but you're not doing it. And if you
yeah,
do it, then your child will see it and it will become an automatic.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
But great
Yes,
advice. We've actually come to the end. Thank you so
yes,
much, Darlene, for your time
my
and for
pleasure.
all the information that you shared and all the stories. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure to be here with you.